Welcome, George, once again. We are back with another topic, and this time we are going to talk about the coaching culture or the coaching institute in this country. So, recently there has been this comment by Mr. Narayan Murthy, the co-founder of Infosys, where he said that the coaching culture is to be blamed for the prestige of the IITs. I mean, the degradation of the prestige of the IITs. The coaching cultures are to be blamed for that, right? And essentially that comes from that idea that the coaching cultures are doing a lot of harm to the innovativeness, the innovative ability of the students, of the youth of the country, because there's a certain way coaching institutions are designed, right? Their purpose is to ensure that students get through an entrance exam, get through an institution of their choice. So they are not there really to impart education, rather they are there to crack exams, and that's a different shift in mindset and approach. More importantly, so that's what we'll discuss in this podcast. So why don't you go ahead and your idea, your take on this topic? Yeah.
Okay. So, first thing that I would say is that I disagree. I disagree. I agree also at some points, but I disagree on this major thing, which, at least from what you've said of Mr. Narayan Murthy's comment, because ultimately the quality of the IITs is the education in the IITs, right? It is not how people are getting in. If if what you put in is what you get out, that I agree, and that somewhere maybe is getting affected. But then what is being done in these coaching institutes is that the students are being taught how to maybe game the system to get in, right? But then after they get in, the IITs get a full 4 years with those students, right? And if the quality of the IIT pass outs is going down, then I would not blame the 2 years that the coaching institutes have spent with them, but I would blame the system at the IITs for not being able to match up, right? These are still students who are competing with everyone else, right? And maybe based on shortcuts and stuff, they're able to solve faster. They might be able to arrive at the answer more surely, right? I I'm not too sure about the JEE entrance system, the first phase and the what do you call it? They have two phases, right? So not commenting on the exam system as such, but these people are just being taught how to do answers, right? Test taking is also an ability, which our system does not prepare. Our educational system from the uh, first to the 10th does not prepare you for the exam taking ability. What these coaching institutes are doing is the teachers there, they've had experience, they've become professionals at test taking, right? There is some coaching institute person who's taken cat 4 times, and he's always got 100 percentile. Right now, what does that show? It just shows that not that he'll be a great manager, right? Cat is not a test of whether you're a great manager. He's just showing, or he is just demonstrating, that he has the ability and he has the knowledge of how to take a cat exam and how to get the best score possible, right? So now, and I don't blame him. He's been wasting a seat every year, right? But I don't blame him. That's part of his business. If the cat system is not able to be better than what he is, then what he's doing is his business, and he's managing that. He's paying the full fee. If the cat system or if the IITs want to discourage people from taking show tests, right, then charge a higher amount. Put more skin in the game, and don't let people game the system just to prove things, right? But as far as the coaching institutes are concerned, I think what they're doing is not wrong, right? What they are pushing out of their systems, which is these students who are uh, JEE crackers, right? What they're pushing out are definitely hardworking people who are spending almost 2 years working with one goal in mind. That is, I don't think there's much wrong in that. There is another part which I do feel bad about, which I feel is wrong. But maybe after your comments, I'll come to the other aspect of what I feel is wrong with these institutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, very well articulated, George. And I also resonate with you. I totally share your thoughts. And I also think it's quite unfair to blame it on the coaching institutions or the coaching culture for whatever you say, the prestige of IITs or whatever, or even for that matter, the innovativeness of the youth. So let's just take a step back. I want to draw light on what do the coaching institutions actually teach. See, they do not teach anything that they have designed per se, right? They teach things that will help students to qualify a given exam. So, if we change the pattern of the exam, the way the coaching institutions teach will also change, right? So, if we want free thinking individuals, if we want innovative individuals, and in that case, and if you want to discourage rote learning, then the very nature of this competitive exams will also have to change, right? Ultimately, you have a system right now where people who can root learn, people who can have a question bank sort of, that there will be 10 questions and either one of those types will come. And if you have students who are just good in memorizing or at least know how to crack those 10 types of questions, he or she has a sure shot to crack an exam, right? That essentially means that student is not thinking beyond that 10 questions, right? So if you want individuals to be innovative, to be free thinking, make sure you have questions beyond those 10 types only. Till the moment we have the system where these 10 types of questions are there and we all know it, the coaching institutions will just prepare you for that. The moment you know that there's a probability and there's a good chance that questions can be anything and not just this pattern only, automatically the approach of the coaching institutions will also change, right?
True.
Right now what is happening is, if you look at the idea, so I've been to an NIT for my graduation. What I've seen is that people, and I did not take coaching for my class 10, 12, but I've seen people who had taken coaching, okay, and had taken more than 2 years of coaching, not just 10, 11. They had taken a gap year as well. I had classmates who had taken 2 gap years. What I've seen is that when they came into the class, at least in the first semester, and we had subjects of maths, we had physics, we had chemistry, their fundamentals were really very strong, much stronger than us. At least I can say. I mean, people who did not need to take a gap year or did not take a gap year, we got through. Their fundamentals were much, much stronger because the same thing they had learned or at least revised multiple times in their coaching institute to crack the exam. Right? At least for those subjects, I know they did not need to prepare. They were preparing for the engineering subjects, at least in the first semester. Right? And that obviously comes in handy as they go to the other semesters as well. So the point is, if you blame the coaching institutions on the fall of innovativeness, or say the root learning, promotion of root learning, you're just taking away the blame from the very system which is allowing the coaching institutions to indulge in this approach, right? So I think, and that's one. And the second part is about Mr. Narayan Murthy's comment that the prestige of the IITs are being impacted because of coaching culture. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think the prestige of the IITs has to do anything with the coaching culture. Yes, it is about the students, and you have 4 years, in some cases 5 years for a dual degree to shape the students. It is about the system of the IITs that actually bring out the quality of student that we know, right? So you have the brightest minds in the country entering into an IIT. What is it that stops us from preparing them to be much more innovative? I mean, they are bright means they have the intelligent quotient, they have the IQ at least. Okay, it's up to the IITs to develop the EQ, right? It's all up to the IITs to give them problems which which compels them to go beyond their comfort zone, right? If you take the Western education, the Ivy League education, I mean, a student just gets admission into a university. They decide on the major and minor later on. Here, after class 12, I have no idea about engineering, yet I'm asked to choose between electronics, computer, mechanical, civil, chemical, whatnot, whatnot. And I don't have a single, I mean, not even an iota of idea what engineering is all about. Forget about the branches of engineering, right? It's the pattern that, the top rankers will go for electronics, computer. Then if you don't get the top rank, then you come to mechanical, civil, and then rest. That's the pattern that's going on now. who is to be blamed for this? It's not the coaching institutions, I guess, right? It's the very system that is there which promotes such kind of thinking, such kind of um, I mean, let's not put a term to it. Lest I get into trouble. But the point is, the system needs to change somehow. The system needs to change. If the system changes, the coaching institutions also will change. If you promote a culture of innovativeness where a student gets into an exam and the question can be anything. I mean, anything in the sense that where the student has to think through the question, the student has to bring in an element of innovativeness, right? I'm sure the coaching institutions also will prepare students to think that way because it's about the approach. It's not of the questions, right?
Exactly.
So your take on it.
Okay. So, agreed. I mean, so I guess both of us agree on at least that aspect that unless it is, I mean, these people are just running a business, they have a goal in mind. And if the goal changes, if the goalpost changes, then their strategy will also change. And therefore, what they do to the students will also change. My problem with the entire coaching culture and with the JEE entrance and the UPSC entrance and CAT entrance is about the way the students they get after these programs, right? These admission programs. I mean, there are multiple examples of people who do not spend their time in school in the 11th and 12th. They take a dummy admission and they spend the entire 2 years going to coaching institutes, right? They have a 12th class certificate from some school, which is affiliated with the board and stuff, but then they have not been attending any classes. So they do not have that socialization which happens in a school, right? A school teaches subjects more than maths, science, and chemistry, right? Maths, physics, and chemistry. They go beyond that. There is socialization that happens. There are other extracurricular activities that happen. There is sports, right? These students going to coaching institutes, they are not getting any of that benefit. So what happens at the end of those 2 years is that you've got students who are very hardworking, right? Right as the system allows, yes, but they are extremely hardworking and they are single-minded, right? Is single-minded focus the requirement of from the youth that the country has, right? Does the country want just single-minded youth? Are we China? Uh, uh, to be a little controversial, but I just don't think that is what uh, we as teachers want for the future of our country, right? We do not want single-minded students, right? Students who come in with just a single focus, right? Which is that I have to clear an exam and get into an IIT. Right? Now, so think of this type of students getting into an IIT. They are hardworking. They will perform well, and I think across time, I mean, even in the past history, uh, students who have graduated from IITs, they have been bright, yes. Maybe Mr. Narayan Murthy's time, they were among the brightest students in the country. They became hardworking because of the rigor in the teaching mechanism at IITs, right? And what came out were wholesome individuals who were able to lead world-class institutions, right? So that entire thing happened. But now, if you talk about what you put in is what you get out, right? So if you're putting in single-minded people who do not have exposure to the socialization in the classroom, who are also going to spend their entire 4 years at the IITs, with that single-minded focus that okay, now I've got into an IIT, now I need to get that 1 crore plus job or that 4 crore plus job, right? So if they're going to be single-minded focused on things like that, then the quality of the IITs might deteriorate. It'll be tougher for the system at an IIT or at any of the top institutions to create students who would become world leaders, right? You might get very good workers out of the system, but do you get good leaders? That is debatable. And there is one more aspect which I'd like to come to later on, right? So we are now talking about people who are in the who've gone through the system. Over to you.
Yes. Yeah. So that point about where you have the schools. The students don't go to schools and they prepare for the IITs, and so they lose out on socialization. So I want to start from there. I think one of the reasons for this is because of the level or that kind of disparity that we see in the board exams at the board level, or the kind of rigor that is required at the board level and the IIT entrance level, right? That is very different, and that's the reason why this system has generated where the focus is more on the cracking the exam, okay, cracking the IIT exam more than focusing on board. But obviously now the cutoff for board has gone higher, as I was reading some time back. So that in a way that means students also have to focus on boards as well. But however, I think this is the time with NEP and everything coming in. I think this is the time we need to really rethink that do we really need to, or do we really, or rather should we really take in students in the IITs or the top institutions of the country, and not just the IITs, I'm saying for all top institutions, the DUs and other medical aims and everywhere, just on the basis of an exam or not, just on the basis of an entrance exam or not. Why can't it be more holistic, right? Just like, for example, where it's based on your overall profile, your interview scores, uh, and there can be a lot of other things that can be there to see whether a student is ready holistically to be a part of that system or not, right? For example, if I'm in IIT, I'm selecting someone for computer science. There are a lot of other things that are required other than knowing your subject, right? Because we know the job market, we know the rigor of it, the emotional quotient that's required in that system. So why can't we design the admission process, and it has to be multi-layered admission process, right? Where it's not just about one exam, it's not just about one interview, it's a combination of a lot of those things, and every component should have perhaps equal weightage rather than heavily relying on one component. For example, there was a time when cat had like, I mean, hugely the it was the weight was hugely in favor of cat. I mean, if you have high cat percentile, in a way you'll certainly get there, right? But I think now they're trying to rationalize that in a way, so it can happen for the INT entrance exam as well, right? For that matter, you don't even need to have different entrance exam. The board can be one sort of it, and then the other layers of the admission process can be non written. I mean, it can be more profile based, it can be more interview based, it can be some group project that you give, it can be many things, right? It can be many things. So it also means, suppose for example, just throwing up this idea, for example, 1 lakh people have applied for the IITs, right? For this process. Now you have the list of this 1 lakh. Why can't we just bring in, so 5 people, make groups of 5 people, right? And these people not know each other, different schools, different this one, and they have to now coordinate and act on a project. I mean, they have to now work on a project, right? Can we do something on that sort? Obviously, now the level of the students have to be also rationalized there, and I think that can be done. That's not an issue. But the point is, 5 people who don't know each other, can they work in a team or not? Don't you want team players? Right? Don't you want people with high emotional quotient? Right? That's what is required. So that will tell us better about whether a student is uh, fit enough to be in the system or not. That's one. Second, why can't you have a system where a student just gets into an IIT, not any branch, the or any discipline? They choose it only after say 1 2 years or 1.5 years, and in that meantime they'll explore all of those. They'll take classes, they will see what excites, they will talk to the seniors, they will see industry people coming and talking, and that they'll know what is it, right? Obviously that also brings in a challenge, like if there are more number of people who are getting into say computer science just because it's high demand, what happens to the core branches? So that problem is there. I mean, it's not an easy solution, or else people perhaps would have done it already. But I guess we need to think towards that. I mean, if you think of liberal education, we need to think towards that. And liberal education does not only mean to arts and humanities, it's also about science, it's also about engineering, it's also about medical, a lot of those things, right? So I think that way a lot more innovation can be enabled, can be facilitated. You will have people with much more open minds. I mean, just the very fact that you're getting into an institution and you don't need to decide what branch I'm taking, that means every option is open for you. That approach itself gives the student an open slate to start with, right? It can be anything that they graduate with, right? So is there, I mean, and it's not something unique. It's there in many countries happening in the West. Why can't we think of it in India right now? Is the time has come. If we just do this few steps, I think a lot of the blame that we put on coaching culture, the route learning and everything, that will be sought, right? So I think there has to be rationalization, the very process of the IITs or the top institutions, and perhaps the role of the coaching institutions perhaps will change them. I don't wish that that thing entirely goes away, because it employs a lot of people and there are some merits to the coaching culture as well. But then the approach has to be different, and the approach will only happen different if the target institutions, their approach is different, right? So yeah.
So,
Okay.
so continuing with your point, for MBA, right? Nobody joins for an MBA marketing or an MBA finance or something like that, right? They join for an MBA and then they choose their specialization in the second year. And I totally support your idea. It and finance might be a very sought after specialization after the first year. But then, does everyone get into finance? No, there is a limitation, class size, section size, etc. So therefore, it is your grades during that first year which determine whether you get finance or you get something else, right? So it should be a similar thing at the IITs also, right? Maybe just take the first year. If you feel that there are too many specialized courses that an engineering student needs to do, take that decision in the first year and give them that time so that they put in that effort during the first year also. Their performance in your system, right? How do they perform in your system should determine what they get versus their performance in the boards or their performance based on coaching or anything else. To add to your point of making the system more wholesome, right? I want to quote the system which the UPSC has, right? I find that to be a lot more interesting because there are certain aspects in that. While I have my grievances with the system, but there are certain aspects that I still appreciate, right? Where they've got general studies as a topic, right? As a paper that you need to clear. So there that requires future administrators of the country to be abreast with things that are happening around, right? And in general studies also there are multiple aspects and multiple areas that they need to concentrate on. And on top of that, there is also this paper on ethics, right? Which is um, which has questions, which has ethical questions which you need to answer. And I think that was a big innovation for the civil services. Um, One can say that everybody would try to game the system and try to answer the ethics paper in such a way that they sound right, right? But at least think of it this way: if not, if even if they are force fitting those ideas into their minds that okay, this is the right answer to write in a situation like this, when they start thinking about the fact that this is the right way to answer an ethics question, right? It is somewhere going to get ingrained in the future when they're going to be administrators. That thought is going to pinch them if they decide to take a unethical decision, right? So somewhere you are already um, you're already unconsciously sort of setting that ethics benchmark on them by imposing this ethics paper in the beginning. In addition, they also have something called the essay paper, right? So it is not just about how you write your subjective answers, but there is also an essay paper which used to be for 200 marks or something. And in that, you need to be able to clearly articulate your ideas. And the essay paper, I think, can be written in any language, right? So whatever language you are comfortable with, you might answer in that. But then you need to be able to look at a topic, articulate it, and these would be topics coming out of the blue, right? You do not have set topics for such things. And so for MBA exams also, for MBA entrances also, a lot of institutes started taking a VAT, which was a written aptitude test. So instead of a GD, a written aptitude test where their writing ability and ability to describe a situation, that was coming, that was becoming an important part of the entire system. So I think these innovations were very interesting. There was once a proposal uh, for the UPSC also. Um, this was almost maybe 20 years ago, where they wanted to try the system where instead of a single day, half an hour, whatever interview that they have um, for as the final phase, what they had planned, what they wanted to do was actually call people to a certain place, right? Similar to SSB, but then because SSB has a lot of physical aspects also to it, here it would be calling people to a certain place and observing them in the various interactions or tasks that they're doing. Not just, I mean, they're not physical tasks, but they are group tasks, they are mental tasks. You can make out a lot about a person's ethical caliber, intellectual caliber, emotional caliber, right? Through such observations and follow up with a further interview. These are very resource intensive, these are time taking. But if somewhere with technology we are able to match things out, I think it would make the admission system a lot more rational, a lot more effective, right? And what you had suggested about assigning a group task to 4 or 5 unknown individuals and asking them to coordinate and collaborate, I think that also would be a very good innovation, because then it is not taking the institution's time. Those people, they're given a certain time and a bandwidth. They work at their own ease from their homes, and what you see is a solution. And you've got AI developing to such an extent that you can monitor their activities over that platform and make out a lot of things, right? You can do that, and I think that should be the future direction, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can have AI designed that way that the grading is also done through machines, right?
True.
Based on their work, right? And I mean, it can be done remotely. They can work remotely, but then you have AI-enabled machines, so it takes away the subjectivity out of the system, and you have that. I mean, everything can be tech-driven there, right? Without anyone to be blamed for it, right? So I mean, this kind of innovations, it's time for it. I guess it's time for it. Lot of this kind of big innovations are happening in the Silicon Valley and the those kind of places. So okay, I'll bring in a point here. I was watching an interview yesterday, interview or podcast, whatever you say. Uh, this was by the founder of Sundial. I forget her name. She's Chinese American. So one question that was asked to her. So she started a company in Silicon Valley, but she also has an office in Bangalore right now, in the Indiranagar. So one of the questions that was asked to her was, "What do you find the difference between people there when you hire people in the Silicon Valley and when you hire people here, right? What are the differences that you find, right? And it has a lot to do with the kind of culture that you have there. It's not about right and wrong, but the kind of difference that she said was pretty relatable. Actually, at least I found it. One difference that she said was people in Silicon Valley where they did not look much for stability. They were much for growth, right? They're much for growth. In India, it's more about stability, right? You need the secured, stable job, right? And a lot of it comes from the fact that since somewhere we don't trust our ability. I mean, the moment anyone seeks stability or wants security in job, it essentially means we don't have enough belief or trust in our competence, in our skills, that in any market situation, I have the ability, I have the skill, I'll get a job. That I'll make a living out of this, right? So that mindset is not there, which is far more relevant there, right? And it also has to do with the kind of education system that there is, right? That's one. But the second point that she said was far more interesting, which I think is pretty pertinent to our topic. She said that here we people are not habituated to think from first principles perspective, right? I'll just very shortly describe what first principles is. So first principle thinking is any problem that you get, you take out you basically analyze the problem in such way so that you go to the root of it, right? You try to understand what is the basic core for which any problem has risen, right? You take away all the branches and everything, you go to the core root of it, and from there you then build it on, right? So for example, if you have a system, if you take away all the complex parts and you go to the root of it, once you identify that, you can take that very thing and you can build much more complex systems to serve other purpose. So it's basically asking more questions, getting the root of any problem. That's the first principles. So when you have a first principles thinking, it essentially means you need to ask more questions. It essentially means you need to disagree with a lot of people, right? In a room, you might need to disagree also, right? Because you're trying to identify the real problem, and people do tend to think in diverse ways. So you need to ask tough questions. What she said was, here in India, that thing that people have to ask or say a tough thing to someone who is superior to them, senior to them, or has more years of experience, people find it very tough here, right? There it's not that, because they're habituated to think from a first principles perspective, right? And this actually comes from the education system that we are going through, that we go through, right? We are not encouraged to ask much questions. We are not encouraged to think from a first principles perspective. I mean, we don't even talk about first principles in India, right? This is there always. It has been there, but we don't talk about it here. It does not mean we'll be disrespectful to our seniors, to who are superior to us, but it just means we can still ask questions, right? Because the ultimate purpose is to identify the solution to a given problem or the root of a problem, right? Now, the same thing, just think when we used to solve our problems in schools, in colleges, right? The purpose was never to solve a problem. The purpose was to understand how the problem is going to solve so that we can replicate that same thing in the exam. It was not about why is this problem this way, right? Why could not it have been any different? Right? It was never that approach. It was never about understanding the problem properly. It was about finding a solution which can be replicated, and the term is replicated in the exam, right? So that first principle does not even come. So this kills your creativity. This kills your free thinking spirit, right? It just takes away. So it's a habit, right? It's a habit that mm, if this is the approach I have been following for solving every problem in my life, so that if I get the solution, I should be in a position to replicate it whenever the next thing comes, right? If this is a habit, that's what we live with. That's what we live with, right? That's what you see in India. People, you take the IT sector, people, the coding skills that you have right now, things are changing a bit. But the coding skills that you have, it's more about fixing things, copy pasting codes from different places just to get the work done, the back end work that is there, right? Right now, due to internet and due to a lot of exposure, things are changing, but that has traditionally been the thing. That's why India is known as the back office of the world, right? So that thing we cannot blame it on the coaching culture. To bring back the coaching culture, this is there is the very system that is there, that has been there, on that still persists, right? Till we change that, nothing else will change, right? And right now, due to globalization, due to information, at least globalization in terms of information, at least, I mean, there are boundaries in terms of trade. Still, there's a thing of deglobalization as well, but at least when it comes to information, it's a proper globalized world. We have information, we know the best systems, what works and what does not work. Why can't we take some of those and imbibe in our own systems, right? It's not that we are not the first two or will be the last two to discuss such things. I'm sure people have thought about it, but I think that approach is required. We need to take the best out of uh, those systems, right? And
True.
there, I think blaming the coaching culture would not help. We, this institution, the systems have to take ownership. How we change the orientation or the approach of students. That's what is more important. Yeah.
True. In fact, you're very right that first principles thinking is not something which comes naturally to us, and we end up losing a lot because of that. Right? As researchers, also, most research questions need to be formulated in terms of the first principles. You might observe a phenomena and you want to research it, right? But then, if you research it at the phenomena level, then that research is not scientific. It is not adding to any knowledge, right? But if you're able to go down to the first principles level, then you would be able to come up with something. Even if it is qualitative, you would still have value for it to be looked at or examined from various other perspectives. And I think somewhere our entire system, the entire education system, fails in making people think um, from that perspective. right? And I think maybe somewhere I also suffer from that. I have sporadic moments when I'm able to deeply get into a first principles type of thought, but then maybe most of the time I am looking at things from a very phenomena perspective, looking at it from a very localized perspective, not going deep in, because maybe the system just did not prepare me for that, and I also haven't put in that effort because I didn't feel the need before this to do something like that, right?
I'll just come in here. So, did you ever get frustrated, or do you sometimes get frustrated whenever you have some problem, professional, personal, or any? Do you get frustrated sometimes?
Well, not frustrated. Yes, there are times when I do get frustrated
We
with,
do get
yes,
sometimes.
yes,
We
we
do
do.
get
So
not all,
totally,
right?
I agree. Yes,
If we are getting frustrated, and this is what I'm my kind of theory that I have, that if we are getting frustrated with a given problem, it essentially means we don't have a first thinking perspective. We just don't have, we don't think on based on first principles, right? Because the moment you think of first principles, you will start to analyze the problem. You'll try to get, so it itself becomes a process, and it becomes an enjoyable process, right? Because there's a process to it, there's a system to it, right? And when you have a process system and the very idea of thinking, if you do that, if you indulge in it, it becomes an enjoyable process. It just does not come in a day. It has to be something that you practice over the years. And if you're getting frustrated, which all of us I do a lot, that means essentially first principles thinking is not our default route. It's as simple as that, right? It's not our default route. Sometimes we may do it when you're conscious enough that nee, think what is happening, why is it happening. But most of the times it is not, right? And if we generalize around us, it's not really. I mean, if you look at an average Indian, we are just not tuned to do that. Why can't we have questions in the entrance examinations, whatever you have, where people have to think based on first principles? The coaching institutions also then start training students based on that. That means
true.
you will start having, you will have the coaching institutions helping the youth in becoming more innovative, right? So I mean, the idea is that how do we bring along, so they are part of the ecosystem. How do we bring all the stakeholders in the ecosystem to help the youth become more innovative, become more free spirited, allow them to fly, I mean, allow them to think with problems, make the process of thinking about problems more enjoyable rather than getting frustrated with it, right? For
True.
example, one of the things that I tend to get frustrated even sometimes is I try a lot to be disciplined, more disciplined in my day-to-day affairs, right? And I get a plan, I have a plan, and more often than not I fail, right? I fail to do it, right? But then the point is I do get frustrated, yes, and a lot say I used to, I still do get frustrated. Maybe now I'm more conscious. Once I get frustrated, I say, okay, let's think, why is it happening? But then the point is, this change in approach is coming because I'm listening to a lot of people. I'm surrounded like by a lot of people. I'm observing a lot. So, but the point is, it is coming in this stage of life. If this would have come much earlier, right, during my graduation 10, 12, 15 years back, it would have been different me then. I'm pretty sure, right? And then the point is, why can't we, if we understand these things, why can't we impart it on our students, on the previous generation, right? And that's where I think we have to think a lot more. Yeah.
In fact, on a light note, I would say, because of our Eastern philosophy and the culture, we go beyond getting frustrated and move on and achieve nirvana and say, even if that's wrong, it doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't matter to us.
Yeah.
The chalta hai
No,
attitude.
I'll just bring in here. I mean, this what I said. Yeah, though it's on a lighter note, but you know what? I also think that we tend to misinterpret some part of it where we say that Guru Shishya Parampara, that thing. I also think we tend to misinterpret in a way where we think that a Guru Shishya Parampara means complete subservience. What is the term? So, being
Yes,
subservient, right? That's
subservient.
what.
Yes,
Yeah, it's not that, right? I mean, if you look, for example, from our scriptures, and I'm not taking a religious line here, but one of the scripture that we have is the Bhagavad Gita, right? Where the disciple is actually asking questions to Krishna, where Arjuna is asking questions to Krishna, and the entire Bhagavad Gita is about question answers, right? So if it was subservience, then Krishna was saying, fight the war. Done. Like it's a done deal. What else do you have? There's no point to asking. But then it was asking. It was asking. It's not just about this, it's also about all other religious scriptures where there's a lot of question answer that is happening. Right? So that means what? If you have a guru and if you have a shishya, the point is you only learn when you ask questions. There's this saying that a teacher appears when the student is ready, and and when the student is really ready, the teacher disappears, right? So when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and when the student is really ready, the teacher disappears, right? That's how it is. But then the point is, ready means what? You are in a state to absorb knowledge. And how do you absorb knowledge? It's not about someone will feed you, will give you directions always. You also need to seek, right? And seeking means, the very aspect of seeking means you are trying to know things, understand things, and you're thinking. And when you're thinking, that's where innovation also comes in, right? So it does not mean being subservient to the entire to the system, to our gurus, to our teachers, not asking. It's not that. And somewhere we have made it that way, right? It's happening because that same root learning thing is coming, right? That you need to mug up this many paragraphs or this many questions, and you get to the exam, replicate it, you get marks, and you're good enough, right? So that's where we are faltering. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I just cut you. Yeah.
No, no, that was on the light note. There
Yeah.
is another aspect to this entire coaching culture thing which I want to highlight, and this is based on my experience yesterday interviewing a student.
Yeah.
Now, the number of students who are attending these coaching institutes, maybe even not attending schools in the 11th and 12th, and going only to these coaching institutes, these people, all of them are not getting into the IITs or the NITs or the top engineering institutions, right? So yesterday I had a student who I was interviewing for admissions, and this person, both elder brother and younger brother, are IITians. He took a 2 year break, got a dummy admission in a school, and was attending coaching classes, took the IIT exam, and he was not able to make it, right? And instead of losing a year, this guy joined for a BBA somewhere and is now thinking of getting in further into management and doing an MBA. Now, for people like that, for the vast majority which does not get into these institutions, right, and who've had only exposure to the coaching institutes over the past 2 years, right, for them, the I mean, you're sort of preparing them for emotional failure in the future, right? If they do not get into an IIT, then for them, the entire r- reason for existence, there's a French word called raison d'être, right? The reason for existence that they had for those 2 years, that just gets shattered based on one result, one exam, one result, right? What do they have after that? Go for some makeup career after that, right? Join for graduation somewhere, do something, and then that's all they have post that. People who are spending 2 years just with a single-minded focus of getting into an IIT, right? And when they're not able to get that, right? I think those people go through a major emotional um, turbulence at the end of that, and then somewhere their confidence for the rest of their life becomes a little shaky because I mean, nowhere else in the future are they going to put in so much of effort for uh, one thing, right? Whether it be at a job or something. Here, 2 years of nothing else. I mean, not even entertainment for a lot of people, just for one exam. And when you don't get that, um, I think we are preparing with this single-minded focus, we are preparing our country and our population for uh, potential mental what collapse, right? Earlier in India, if someone were to say that they are going through some sort of a going through some sort of a emotional upheaval or something, people used to tell them to shut up and that you'll get a slap and you'll get set, right? That sort of an attitude. But then with the West and with more realization, we are seeing how people get. I mean, that how mental health is a big issue, right? And I think with that awareness and with the awareness of what this coaching system is doing to people, I think we are going to see lot more of these mental health issues coming up in the future, where people um, feel dejected, feel a lack of self-worth, and they, I mean, the country is going to face that if, unless we change the entire system, right? The entire system of admissions into these things, where these need not be the only career options and these need not be the most sought after career options too.
Yes. Yeah. Right. I agree. So those things, I think one of the terms for this is like emotional intelligence, right? But I'm saying, yeah, these are mental health issues, and I think this also need to be discussed much more in the system, in the universities. Right? That's where the focus on EQ, emotional quotient, also, or emotional intelligence also has to be there. I think, and as you rightly say, that it has to be starting right from the school days in the admission
True.
process, where EQ is being actually checked, or I mean is being taken into consideration before bringing people into the system, right? And within the system, even working further on that, those things have to change. It's not just about the text. It's not about the knowledge that you need to get for a given discipline. It's beyond that, and education is about that. It's not just about those things. But at the end, but I guess both of us agree on this, that we cannot just blame the coaching institutions for this. Yes, they have their own faults. That's there. But I think if the system, the target institutions where the coaching institution is enabling students to go, if their the system changes, if their admission process changes, right, even the coaching institutions will have to adapt for sure. There's
True.
no other way they will be, right? Because even if you see the kind of exams that UPC had or IITs had previously, right now it's quite different right now, right? Even now they have two phases. So obviously the coaching institutions are preparing students accordingly. They are not stuck with the old system, right? They have adapted already, right? So that means what? If we at I mean, if people at the IIT level or UPSC level, they start changing the system, and that thing will also change. So, and that's where we'll foster the culture of innovation, right? And we did discuss some important points on that. So, great, Sunil. George, with this, I think we can come to an end of this episode. We'll be back again with another episode, right?
Yes, it was. I mean, you summarized it well, and thank you. It was
Yeah.
an interesting talk. I did not think I would have much to talk about, but somehow it we did have a fruitful discussion.
We did have, yes.